At my boyfriend's work party, I revealed I'm a drag queen, and now he's ashamed of my career and fears I've damaged his reputation. I, a 24-year-old male, and my boyfriend, also a 24-year-old male, have been together for about 3 years. We met in our final year of university at 21. He's a primary school teacher and I'm a drag queen and performer. I have been doing drag since I was 19, and before I met him I usually worked 4 to 5 nights a week, while he does the usual teaching hours. I'd also like to add that he is usually supportive of my career and tries to attend at least 1 show a month. After every school year, the school throws a little celebration for the staff to show they appreciate the work done throughout the year. The majority of the staff attend, including the head teacher and board of governors. Staff are also allowed to bring their significant others. This would have been our first time going to the party, as he started the job the previous September. When he told me about it, he said that I didn't have to go if I was performing, but the perks of being a performer are that I have greater freedom over my working hours. So, I told him I would move things and I'd attend with him. He seemed pleased when I told him. A couple of days before the party, he mentioned that I didn't have to go with him if I wanted to perform again, but I told him it wasn't a problem, and I'd love to go. He then told me that he hadn't told his colleagues what I do as a living, and he just told them I was in theater. I was a bit taken aback because he's always been supportive of my career and I'm not ashamed of what I do. In fact, I love it more than any other job I've had. I asked him if he was embarrassed about what I did, and he said he wasn't. It was just that his colleagues are professionals, and they might not understand my job or may have some issue with it. So the night of the party comes around, and he asks me to just say I'm a theater performer. I didn't answer and just continued to get ready and met him outside when we were leaving. The party started fine, but then people started mingling and people were asking questions about me. It was my first time meeting most of his colleagues. When they first asked what I did as a career, I completely ignored my boyfriend's request and stated that I'm a drag queen and work on the club scene. Most were intrigued, as I think it was their first time meeting a queen, and asked a lot of questions. And I told funny stories, and everyone seemed to enjoy them. I noticed a couple of people give me the side eye when I mentioned it, but I gave them no mind. When the party was over, my boyfriend and I had an argument, and he said that I had jeopardized his career at the school, as people would judge him and treat him differently now for what his significant other does as a career. He said that people wouldn't take him seriously and that it would be a laughingstock at the school. I told him that I was proud of what I do, and I wouldn't pretend to be something I'm not just to try and portray a certain image he wants people to see. And we're going to start straight away with Kimmy Kibbles on this one, who says, I'm really conflicted on this. Honestly, you should definitely live your truth. But at the same time, people are going to judge him differently now since we live in a very homophobic, anti-fluid society in general. A lot of people in the school system, such as administrators, could look at him differently and not take him as seriously because of it. And that's an unfortunate reality. I'm going to say you're the a-hole here. He asked you not to tell anyone. If you had planned to tell people, you should have told him beforehand. He has to work with these people every day. You don't. It affects him more than you. Well, Pati Duda says, you're the a-hole for not being upfront about your intentions before attending the party. Your boyfriend clearly knew this was going to be a difficult conversation and made the effort to bring it up prior to the party. That was your opportunity to speak your piece. Instead, you blindsided him. You got a couple of side eyes for a night. Only he knows what he will be dealing with going forward. When You Are Lost says, you know what bugs me about this post? It is all about your comfort. It's acknowledged, but not about how your partner feels. He has been nothing but supportive, you say. He makes sure that he goes to 1 show at least a month. He even made sure that you were 100% okay to attend due to your performances, that your shows have priorities. He made a request, but instead of talking like an adult, you ignore it like a teenager. Yes, not answering is a teenage attitude. And at the party, you admit ignoring your partner's request feeling. Congratulations, somewhat interesting. But there were also a few that side-eyed you. Those people are going to give him problems. He said he wasn't embarrassed. It was just that his colleagues are professionals and they might not understand my job or may have some issue with it. He gave you a reason for his discomfort, yet you ignored it. You're not going to be working with the consequences. It's a shitty life, but a toxic working situation still exists, and he fears that he is going to be in one now because you thought your own feelings were more important. His CO workers are not his friends. They don't need to know every detail, just the bare minimum, which your boyfriend tried to give. Have you ever thought about your boyfriend's comfort in his working environment? You're the a-hole. Next time, sit down and have a conversation like an adult instead of ignoring your partner's feelings on his own matter. Celia Soda says, I think you're the a-hole. He expressed to you that he didn't want his CO workers to know what you did for a living. And instead of resolving it then, as you should have, you apparently accepted his request and told his CO workers anyways. The right way to deal with this was at the time of the request. Either you accept and honor his request or you don't and resolve it another way. And one more from And Still the Sun Rises, who says, "You're the a-hole for ignoring him instead of discussing it before the events. He tried to discuss it with you twice." Being gay and teaching can be a tightrope, which you have no experience with as a drag performer, literally one of the most LGBT-dominated workforces. If you were so insistent on telling people, you should have spoken to him about it before. Now, what are your thoughts on this one? Let me know in the comments below, and we will move on to the next story. Story 2, about handmade toys and financial conflicts. Am I the a-hole for no longer making toys and furniture for my former sister-in-law after her new husband called them an embarrassment and me cheap for not paying for stuff? My brother died before his firstborn child was born. Because of this, I've had an above-average involvement in my nephew's life. One thing I've always done is build him toys and furniture. It was a way of providing without the awkwardness of handing over cash. Also, between my late brother's cash and life insurance, via a work trust, a fund was set up for my nephew for $500,000. He wasn't actually married to my sister-in-law, now my ex-sister-in-law. At work, I've made him a lot of wooden or 3D printed toys, but also some simple handmade electronic toys. My sister-in-law was always grateful for these, and my nephew, by all accounts, loves his custom toys. Fast forward 3 years, and my former sister-in-law has gotten married. I was attending my nephew's 3rd birthday, and I turned up the night before to assemble his present. It was a small climbing frame swing set. I had watched better carpenters than me in the lab make. The new husband was a little standoffish, but come the day of the party, he was telling anyone who listened that I didn't pay or make the present. I had lackeys at work do it for free. This culminated in him calling all my presents an embarrassment and, given my fancy job, saying I could afford to splash some cash. I confronted him and my former sister-in-law, and she basically confirmed that whilst the presents were appreciated, she honestly expected more direct support from me after my brother's death. My mother stepped in and reminded her my brother paid for this house, and they regularly take cash out of the trust, approximately $10,000 a year. We walked out without hearing any worthwhile response, but I continued to see my nephew without incident. 6 to 7 months go by, and I'm visiting, only to be told my former sister-in-law was pregnant with twins, and she was wondering if I could make some duplicates of items I made for my nephew, as they needed 2 sets. I scoffed, said she had some balls asking me to make stuff after she was so ungrateful, and that I owe her unborn children very little. She got upset and explained her prior statements about my handmade gifts and said she felt they were the kind of little things someone did as a favor, not what a family provides. That's why she's asking me now, as a friend, to do her a favor and manufacture duplicates. I said no again, and her husband shouted through that it didn't matter, they would just use the trust to provide for the kids like it's supposed to. I retorted there was for my nephew and good luck accessing it for that because the trust requires my signature to pay out. I wasn't even home before he was calling me to apologize, clearly unaware I had the reins to my late brother's money. The apology was insincere, and I asked to speak to my former sister-in-law, where I confirmed again I wouldn't be manufacturing her anything. I'll still be an uncle to my nephew and be impartial when it comes to accessing my nephew's trust, but her husband has burned a lot of my goodwill with this. Am I the a-hole for not doing her a favor after all that? Firstly, as always, I'm sorry about your brother in this situation, and well done to you for still being a great brother and a great uncle to this nephew. And me, I'm about old school. I love a handmade wooden toy or something like that, and especially a 3D printed toy. I had a 3D printer, and you can make some absolutely awesome stuff. Much better than the action figures you get these days where they don't bend at the elbows and stuff like that. You can actually make them like they used to be, like the good old Centurion characters and stuff like that. Don't get me stuck, don't get me started. But I hate this whole entitled attitude that because you earn X amount, you should be spending X amount on toys rather than hand-making them with the love that you put into them. I thought, man, that winds me up. Someone like you who goes and visits their nephew more because of what happened with your brother and stuff like that, and they're still chucking it back in your face. I think that's absolutely disgusting. Then they had the cheek to come back to you later and say, "Can you make duplicates?" Cheeky so-and-sos, man. But I kind of had a little smirk on my face, and I shouldn't have, but I had a little smirk on my face when you told him that you have to sign off the money, and then he was phoning you later to apologize. I was like, and I think it is a good thing that you're in control of that money as well, absolutely. And not the, "You're an amazing uncle." Keep that up if you can, though. And we'll move on to the comments to see what they say. Walk to the Brook says, "Not the a-hole First, my condolences on the loss of your brother. Your sister-in-law is beyond entitled. She lives in a house paid for by your late brother and benefits from her trust, and then has the gall to criticize your gifts to your nephew? Outrageous. Sensitive cover says, not the a-hole. Sorry for your loss. Your brother was so smart to give you control over the trust for your nephew. That ensures your nephew's position is protected, both financially and in this new family. Sister-in-law's husband is bad news, and she doesn't seem to have good judgment. If you didn't have oversight of certain things, I bet your nephew would have been robbed and neglected by these greedy people. Lively Sally says, I'm absolutely speechless. $10,000 a year is a lot to feed and clothe a child living in a house which seems to be paid off. To be expecting you to provide for your brother's kid, who is set up like this, is just baffling to me. Your gifts sound extremely generous. Does your sister-in-law not work at all? Not the a-hole. Snickers Cat says, not the a-hole. But if you need a couple of nieces, my daughters would absolutely love handmade toys. In all seriousness, though, I think handmade puts more thought and effort into your gift than just spending $50 for a piece of crap at the store. Being told repeatedly your gifts aren't welcome, and then being angry at you for not providing more of the supposed unwanted gifts is ridiculous. And your sister-in-law's husband absolutely is being insincere. I just hope he doesn't take his anger out on your nephew, especially when the new babies are born. And Fit Bear says, not the a-hole at all. And the two of them have a lot of nerve for treating you that way and then asking for favors. They're also the a-holes if they use your nephew's trust for anything other than what your nephew needs. If they're spending on themselves or the other kids in any way, they're out of line. And we'll have one more from OK Professional who says, not the a-hole. Seems the new hubby came in with a big mouth and big ideas and talked sister-in-law and nephew out of the thoughtful gifts you gave. Sadly, you may have to keep an eye on the situation when the new baby gets here. Make up for any lack of attention your nephew may experience. You did great and are doing great. Definitely watch that greedy new husband. Don't let him get over in that trust. He obviously thought it would be used for his kids as well. Now, what do you guys think of this one? I can't believe people turn down handmade toys like that. I think it's an absolutely amazing thing to do, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm blown away by that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and we move on to the next story. Ah, dear. And the fact that he went away and made an actual swing set as well, with his colleagues, of course. Haha. Next story. Story tree about changing the child's name to the new husband's family's surname, and our next story is from Regina, 1111. Am I the a-hole for rudely telling my mother-in-law the reason why I won't give my son my husband's last name? And there's an acronym we should be aware of before we get into it, which is LEOS, which is a law enforcement officer. So, hi. I'm the mother of a 6-year-old son. I've been with my husband for 3 years. His family is a big, proud family of Leos, and my husband is a Leo himself. They love my son as their own, but my mother-in-law repeatedly asked about the possibility of giving them the family's name, as in changing his last name, which belongs to my late husband's. Then, she lists the reasons why I should consider it. I gave no clear answers and hoped she'd drop it. My husband was working when me and my son visited his family last weekend. Mother-in-law asked again when I will finally give my son the family's name. I felt annoyed. I said I needed time to think about it to get her off my back, but brother-in-law chimed in, saying I should feel honored and not even take time to think about it because his family's name and reputation are well known among others. Mother-in-law said by not considering it, I'm creating distance between them and my son and preventing them from being a family under one name. I was mad. I said I wasn't going to do that anytime soon and will wait until my son's old enough to decide. I added that I didn't feel it's right to make this decision on my son's behalf, no matter how much his stepfamily loves him. He already has a father that gave him a respectful last name, and so this should be enough, period. Brother-in-law and his cousin chuckled sarcastically. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law said I was a hypocrite for expecting them to treat my son as their own, and yet refused to let them give him their last name. I responded that they're the ones letting a name dictate the kind of relationship they have with my son. I don't understand why it's so important to have my son have their last name, like it's supposed to complete him or something. Mother-in-law still argued about it after I said this was between me and my husband. I didn't stop, so I left during dinner. Then I got a text from mother-in-law thanking me for rudely telling her that her family's name isn't good enough for me and my son. She said it's my decision to keep my son's last name, but I should no longer expect them to treat him as if they are family after I made it abundantly clear that they are not. Mother-in-law entered the room she had for when my son visits, and sister-in-law sent her husband to get back the gift she gave to my son and made up an excuse for it. I was hurt and consulted Mum, who said I should show my in-laws compliance if I wanted benefits for me and my son's future, since they have potential and are well off. My son's current last name is useless at this point, according to her. My husband is conflicted. One minute he's saying his mom kind of has a point. The next, he is on the phone yelling at her to stop, but still thought being rude was not the way. Did I go too far? Was I the a-hole? I told my husband I wouldn't be visiting anymore, although he said he could tell them to apologize and drop it. But I feel like this is too big for an apology to fix. Even if I seem rude, I just don't understand the logic in this one. So, they're basically just saying that you have to have the last name, or you're not considered family. The fact that they're totally willing to just disown this son because of not giving him the last name, it just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. But Talib says, not the a-hole. Your mother-in-law is a piece of work, and I'm appalled that your husband is not backing you up on this. You're absolutely right in that your son already has a father. It's wonderful that your husband loves him as his own, but the only person who gets to decide if your son changes his name is your son, and he is not old enough to make that decision yet. Spherical Chicken says, so if your in-laws had a daughter and she got married and changed their surname, they would no longer consider her family. Bored Again says, not the a-hole. That whole family. It's a name, a last name. If they're willing to make such a fuss and pull gifts from a child because his last name doesn't match his father's, they're all sexist and old school. It's pathetic. ETA, I'm aware it's stepfather, but the way the family is acting comes across as he's not really the father's stepfather unless the last name is the same. HG Tor says, not the a-hole. Your in-laws are insulting your late husband, then taking it out on your son. Your husband should be defending you. If he doesn't, that's honestly disgusting to let you or your son be treated that way.